Welcome back, everyone, or should we curtsy instead? I'm T,
And I'm Nessa.
and together we are the Casual Fangirls, here to chat about the latest installment by Shondaland in the world of Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte. It feels good to be back. It feels great to be
Mm,
back.
Another season in the ton.
Well, yes, on the ton, but like off season because it happens in the winter, not during the summer. It just feels amazing to be back in their world,
Hmm.
which is saying something considering what if we were in the real world we would not like living it during that time. So let's get into that. Uh, we're going to dive right into the overall plot of the season and give our thoughts on the show. But first, we want to give our spoiler-free review of the season by just describing the season in a couple of words or phrases. For those of you who may not have seen it, maybe this will inspire you to go dedicate the 6.5, 7 hours of your life to watching the story. I'm going to let Nessa go first. How, in a spoiler-free way, how
Hmm.
do you feel about this season of Bridgerton, Queen Charlotte's?
I definitely have to say that first things first, it's great to be back. It's great to be back in this world. And it was emotional. It was an emotional story. The show centers around three strong women in the Bridgerton universe. Queen Charlotte, of course, who the show's named after, right? Lady Danbury and Violet Bridgerton, each with such unique experiences, stories. I loved watching their struggles, their triumphs. You're rooting for them, you're worried about them, you want to see them do well, you want to see them come out on top. And even though you know where the story ends, so to speak, it doesn't take away from going back and finding out who these women were before we meet them and what they've been through and how they got to where they are. So, and I feel like no matter what walk of life you come from, you're going to find something to relate to amongst any one of these women that we see. The other thing for me was that it was surprising. Like all the twists and turns that we get, I was just like, wait, what's happening? What is going on? And then, like, I just didn't see certain things coming. And I was like, how is this going to play out? So it was nice that even knowing like bits and pieces of their lives, they were still able to surprise us. And it makes sense and flows into the present day Bridgerton that we know. And then, of course, the costumes, the jewels, the hair. It was all magnificent. It was beautiful. It was tens across the board. I loved the fros, the braids, the dreads, the plaits, the updos, the downdos, the crowns, the tiaras, the feathers, the chains, the everything. Everything. Mwah, 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 mwah. Ate it up. Loved it. How would you how did you feel about it? How would you describe it?
So I think I was shockingly moved by this season more than I thought I was going to be. I really enjoyed the first two seasons. Thought it was great storytelling. I love being in the Regency era and just being in worlds with where that dating style was in place. Just because I find it so foreign to the way we do dating now. I found this story to be deeply moving. Because in a way, as you said, it was very easy to relate with the main characters. You can't help but automatically position yourself in the if I was in that position, what would I do? Which kind of forces you to confront or forced me to confront some of my gut reactions and how that may change my perspective on some of the choices I'm currently making. Specifically, what would I do if I found myself in a specific dating situation where I didn't know something about someone that came to light after we were committed to each other? How would I potentially deal with that? It was very profound for me to like sit there and think about that. Um, Thinking about dating, the type of parent I want to be, the type of parent was a huge undercurrent for this season. How societal norms and pressures directly contradict a person's natural instinct to gravitate towards what will make them happy. So I'm speaking specifically, and this is not a spoiler, but about Lady Bridgerton, Violet. Her storyline was very much like, ooh, like she knows what will make her happy, but though she's so afraid of how society would treat her that she can't even allow herself to bask in the possibilities yet. So there's that. I thought it was brave. There are a lot of plot points that feel downright Jerry Springer esque, and I think that this speaks to your surprising like piece of it.
Yeah.
And when you zoom out, it can come off as kind of trashy. Like if I just told you what the plot point was, you'd be like, "Oh, why are they doing stuff like that?" But, it was very smartly and expertly done because it plays on our knowledge of the characters. And so that humanizes the actions a lot better in a way that's just not common. You don't commonly see that way. And then finally, I thought it was super inspirational to be able to see people of color actually deal with the racism that we all know must be there in some capacity. Um, you know, this day and age, if we are in predominantly white spaces, we often feel like we are the representative of the entire race. We got to see that in another light that wasn't tied specifically to slavery or any sort of like super harsh torture type conditions. This was like we're elevating as a society and we got to figure out how we can help each other do that. And I just thought it was really inspirational to see that without all the physical trauma usually associated with that storytelling. So um long-winded, thought it was great. You should go see it if you haven't seen it yet. I again was deeply moved. Let's get into the specifics now though. First, now we'll give the spoiler warning. Nessa, can you please let the people know what they should do if they have not seen Queen Charlotte yet?
So listen, guys, if you have not seen Queen Charlotte yet, definitely go back, carve out about 6.5 hours of your life to watch, cry your heart out, then come back and join us, get into it. Or if you don't feel like it and you just want us to tell you how it went, sure, why not? Stick around, right? It's your life. You make the choices. If Bridgerton taught us anything, is that you have choices. Well, some people do.
Kind of.
Some people more than others, but you do. You, the viewers, you, the listeners, have choices. So yes, we will be covering Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. We will definitely be diving into season 1 and season 2 of the Bridgerton series. Later on, we'll be speculating about future seasons, and if we may or may not spoil anything, we'll definitely let you know, just in case I throw out a couple of the book title names out there and stuff. So if I will definitely give that warning again if the conversation gets there, so that you guys know that it's coming and so that I don't spoil anything for you guys. Because if y'all know me, I like to deep dive and look at the interviews and look up
She
stuff
does.
and all that good stuff. T likes to get into like the historical aspect of all this stuff. Me, I'm like, what were the interviews like? Did y'all like each other? Like, tell me about the tell me about the costuming. Take me on set behind the scenes. Yeah, that's more my jam. So that is all things Bridgerton, guys. So let's put it out there. But let's get into our plot points. T, please take it away. Give us our casual download.
Yeah, so we're gonna do something new. Generally, when we do reviews of TV shows, we tend to try to break up the season so it allows us to go a little bit deeper. We did not do that this time, so we're doing the entire first season, or
Mhm.
this entire season of Queen Charlotte in one shot. And so that being said, we drafted like a little mini download. We'll call it a casual download to catch, just to remind people of the main plot points that happened. We're going to do it with our main characters, Queen Charlotte and King George, for the most part. And then we'll talk about some of the other side stories a little bit later. So I'm just going to read this through and then we can dive into all of the things. So, really quickly, Queen Charlotte's casual download. In the present, Queen Charlotte is dealing with the fact that none of her 13 surviving children with King George has produced an heir. She goes on a matchmaking spree to find her sons suitable wives and forces them to marry. This frantic search to continue the bloodline forces Charlotte to reminisce about her match with George and their love story. So, as a flashback, we start the show from Charlotte's point of view and watch as her fate is decided by her brother Adolphus, a fate that includes being shipped off to marry the King of England. We see early on that Charlotte is no dummy and has some insightful questions. Why did they need to come all the way to Germany to find the next Queen of England? Why is no one talking about who the king is as a person? She deduces something isn't right and attempts to flee the wedding before it starts. By chance, she happens to meet George during her escape, and after actually meeting him, decides to stay. On their wedding night, and for most of the honeymoon, George leaves her alone in Buckingham House, all by herself to do absolutely nothing. Charlotte even tries to convince him to come back, but he doesn't. Eventually, George comes back of his own accord, and they have a wonderful honeymoon fit for any lovely couple. Honeymoon bliss is short lived, though. As Charlotte overhears George speaking with his mother, uh, I was going to call her Catelyn Stark, but let's save that for another time, with his mother, and infers from their conversation that George is faking being into her because it is his duty as king. This turns the relationship icy cold, culminating in them only being around each other to have sex on even days, as their only duty right now is to produce an heir. They dislike each other all day, but during their fits of passion, it's obvious how much they're into each other. Eventually, Charlotte and George agree to have a normal relationship, and that night, Charlotte witnesses George have a mental break. The show then does one of my favorite things and shows us the events we've already seen from a different character's point of view. I actually do enjoy this. That's not sarcasm. I like when they do stuff like that. In the fourth episode, we see the events of the first three episodes from George's point of view and learn that he clearly really loves Charlotte, but is afraid of her discovering his secret. George suffers from a mental disorder that causes him to lose his grasp on reality for a bit. We learn that this is why no one would speak about the king, why they searched for a queen from so far away, and why George has been keeping his distance from Charlotte. He's afraid he will hurt her. We learn that George's mental break from the last episode was triggered by learning about Charlotte's pregnancy. Next morning, he overhears Charlotte confronting his mom for not telling her what was going on, and ashamed, George returns to his experimental witch doctor, which is what I'm calling him, to continue trying to discipline the madness out of him. Don't worry, we're almost done. George spends the entirety of Charlotte's pregnancy with the witch doctor, being tortured on a daily basis with no communication with the people who care about him. Charlotte eventually figures out what's going on, fires the witch doctor, and vows to be by George's side if he loves her. He does. Through the end of the show, we see Charlotte keep her promise as they agree to take on the world as a team. Back in the present, Charlotte is confronted with the idea that she was never a good mother, but a great queen, how lonely she feels without her farmer George, and is rejoiced when her third son Edward announces that he and his new wife are pregnant. She tells her husband, the now mad King George, and for a brief moment, they are both back in head over heels love with each other, a team taking on the world together. That was the casual download.
Why did you call him the witch doctor?
Because I don't know, he gave me witch doctor vibes.
Okay. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, why would she call him the witch doctor? It's not like he was doing voodoo.
No, he's not doing voodoo. I probably shouldn't call him that, but he was definitely doing experimental medicine, not conventional medicine. And so to me, that strikes me as like witch doctor. I have nothing against like witch
Maybe
doctors
it's
and
like, I
all
don't
that
know,
stuff.
maybe because I work in a space of like intellectual disabilities and stuff like that. But like this was common. Like anyone who had like a mental disorder, some sort of intellectual disability, it was a lot of abuse going on and a lot of
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So to me, it didn't feel like out of place. Like to them, this was science. To some of them,
Yeah. But to
uh,
us, it's not. So
but like what even like in the room when they had the other doctors and stuff. Because first I was annoyed because the guy was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna talk to him, right? I'm not gonna be like these other people who are bleeding him and beating him. I'm just gonna talk to him and he'll be fine." And everybody's like, "Talk to him?
I was like,
Like,
wait,
you're gonna
therapy
cure him
sounds
with
great.
therapy? You're gonna cure him with your voice?" He's like, "It just has to be the right voice," and then ends up like torturing him anyways. So I was just like, I don't know what that was all about. I guess that is a nitpick. There we go. We were looking
Yeah.
at nitpicks earlier. That is why. But yes, thank you for that download. That was great. That was awesome. We got all the major big details in there. I love it.
Yeah. So let's jump into this. So let's like just start with the casting of the show. How did you feel about meeting the younger version of some of the characters we've already known and love? We also get introduced to some new people. How did you feel about it overall?
I mean, just to let the audience know, right? So we have India Armitifio as young Queen Charlotte. Golda Rocheval returns as present day Queen Charlotte. Corey Milcrest is young King George. Arsema Thomas is young Lady Danbury. Adot Ajoa
And
Ando is the present day Lady Danbury. Sam Clement, young Brimsley. Hugh Sachs, Brimsley. Michelle Fairley, Dowager Princess Augusta, also known as Catelyn Stark. For she looked familiar to anybody. Connie Jenkins Gregg as young Violet Ledger. Ruth Gemmell as Lady Violet Bridgerton. So I thought, in all, honestly, the casting was perfect,
perfect.
especially when we're talking about young Queen Charlotte and young Lady Danbury. And I love that the space was made so that, yes, you can see the similarities between the younger and the present day, but obviously you're not the same person you are when you're 17 as when you are in your 50s or whatever, right? So I love that there was room to be themselves, be their younger selves, make those mistakes, and be slightly different personality, but obviously paying homage to who the character eventually becomes. And so I thought India was perfect. And some behind the scenes stuff I learned was that they actually did a casting of Golda's moles so that they could put it on India's face. And she was like, it was great because then when you look and you don't really recognize yourself, it's easier to get into character and everything. And so I thought it was great. I thought it was great. I love the chemistry between India and Corey, between, young King George and Queen Charlotte. I also really enjoyed the friendships that they portray, the female friendships, in particular. I feel like a lot of times in these stories, you don't really always get to see the female friendships. And I think Bridgerton has made it a point to put female friendships on display. So even the chemistry between Charlotte and Danbury, it's like, oh, it's like when you're at the corporate lunch and like you're like, oh, there's another black girl. Hey. And then you find out not only is there another black girl, but she's my type of black girl. So it's like, how's it going? Besties, thanks.
Yeah.
Locked in. Ain't no switching up. So I love the cast. What about you?
Agree with everything that you said. I think that in addition to the highlight or the spotlight on female friendships, there was also, and similar to the other seasons as well, we've seen this with like Queen Charlotte against Lady Whistledown. Seeing young Lady Danbury against the Dowager Queen Augusta,
Mm.
that like standoff, I was like, this is good. Like this is, back in those days, women were absolutely the minority. They had no rights whatsoever. They couldn't hold titles and like all this other stuff. And these two women figure out a way to like use what they do have access to in order to gain stuff they need for their family, to protect their family and protect their lineage, their legacy. And
Hmm.
so I thought that was brilliant. That was brilliant. Especially when Queen Augusta was like, I don't like you, but I like that we're sparring. So figure this out.
And yeah, I mean, it definitely puts on display how, at the end of the day, like women are upholding the society, right? It's Augusta who's protecting George all these years and
Mhm.
calling the shots and and then it eventually gets passed on to Charlotte, right?
Mhm.
That duty. And then Danbury, it falls on her to not only figure out what's going on for her family, but what's going on for her side of the tracks. Like, for all the people that she came up with, now that's on her. So I love that it's, even though they are in this patriarchy, in this world where they have limited power, they are still finding ways to uphold everything and
Mhm.
seek more in their own type of way.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it this way, like if it wasn't for Dowager Princess Augusta, the lineage would be completely different. They probably would have figured out a way to replace King George in some way, shape, or form way
Hmm.
sooner than, his firstborn son becoming regent later on in his life.
Do we know if
So
Augusta had other children?
huh?
Do we know if Augusta had other children?
I don't know that for sure, but I
Because
do think that he might have been the only one.
I know they said that George's father died, right? And then she had to
George
be taken care of by the George's grandfather.
Yeah, so it sounds like his father died before he became king, which is why she's a dowager princess and not a dowager queen.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. Oh,
so
I love you.
you're welcome.
I love when you make things make sense for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. The dowager princess thing was bothering me like crazy until she went and said like, "Oh, like when my husband died, I was in debt to his
Yeah.
father who was cruel." And it's
Yeah.
actually one of those things too that like I don't know what the studies, what the research shows today on certain mental disorders. Like we don't know exactly what the actual King George III, what he was suffering from in real life, but based off of all the knowledge we do have, experts feel like he probably was suffering from bipolar disorder. I'm
Hmm.
not sure what the research says is the environmental conditions that make it an opportune space for someone to, have bipolar disorder, but they made it very specifically to say that his grandfather was horrible to him, like
Yeah.
physically abusive to him and
Yeah.
his mother. And so I thought that was really interesting that they made sure to like put that in there, because then if you start thinking about it's important, right? To think about, well, the whole thing about someone being born with bipolar disorder and everything like that, I don't think that there's anything that says that that's not true, but I also think that environmental triggers actually play a huge role, and they put some of that into the story as well. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
if you watch him along the story too, it seems like when he's under heavy stress or like there's a major change or
mhm,
something, that seems to
trigger.
trigger him. So yeah, I mean that would definitely make sense and play into it. And we already kind of touched on this, but like let's expand it a little bit more, right? Let's talk about how the ton of Queen Charlotte's young time is different than the present day ton that we know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that I was hoping was never part of the story, but it's clearly very deep into the story. So I'll kind of let you take the reins on this.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. So when we first watched the first Bridgerton season, Nessa and I watched it about the same weekend. We binged it and then we talked about it. This was back in lockdown days when I was still stuck in New York and, whatever. But um one of your nitpicks from that season was that you felt like the racial rules of the ton just came out of left field. Like you thought that Bridgerton was set up in a utopia sort of world where racism never existed, and these castings are just people, doesn't matter their race is not a thing in this world. And then in one of the later episodes in the first season, Lady Danbury made it clear, like, we have this stature because one of them fell in love with one of us. Basically, the King
Right.
George fell in love with Queen Charlotte. And the Duke at the time was just like, that's why love makes no sense, because just like that, if he decides to change his mind, then all of this goes away, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a huge nitpick for you. And this season in Queen Charlotte, we see that from the ground up, like how that came to be. I love that they attempted to explain it. I don't know that I believe that like this could have actually happened in real life, but I love that they attempted to explain it. And essentially the explanation was they had to go so far outside of England to find someone who may not have heard of King George's suffering, what he's suffering from.
Yeah.
They went to Germany, and they found someone of royal blood who had more in them. More is um, they were originally from the continent of Africa, so they have African features, just like Queen Charlotte. In historical times as well, Queen Charlotte had African features. And I love, oh my goodness, I love when they were painting her and she was like, paint me darker. And the princess was
Augusta.
like, no, paint her lighter. And I was like, that's why all the paintings
You want
nowadays,
her to glow. The king wants her to glow. But
whatever.
also, I want to say too, like, not only to search far and wide for someone who may not have heard rumors, right? But then when they get there, they have no friends. They have no
Uh,
ties. They're isolated. So and I know, like, I think sometimes it takes you out of it and you forget because when we do historical dramas, they've always got an English accent no matter where they're from. But right, it we would expect that maybe she does speak English. She probably does speak English, but maybe it's not great, right? You're taking her away from her first language, German, and you're putting her in English society where she knows no one. So no one she there's no one for her to tell, and there's no one to tell her like, "Hey, this is what's going on." So I thought that was like, I see what y'all do. Okay. Yep.
mhm. Yeah, I appreciated the attempt to explain the world. I mean, I don't have any nitpicks about how they explain the world, except I don't think it's I just don't know societies to behave that way, that just because uh, a white king marries a black queen, that, like, all of a sudden it's like, "Hey, we're all, like, one big happy family now." And they did, like, go through steps to say, like, "Well, people wasn't feeling it. Look at Violet's mother,"
Yeah.
and all of that stuff.
Yeah. They definitely let it be known that there's still that divide, right? So like when you are dropped in this time in this world, you get the sense that they're kind of trying to do the segregated but equal thing.
Mhm.
So there is a black society, right? And there is a black high society, but their wealth does come from what I loved about Danbury's family is like they got their wealth from their homeland. She was like,
Africa,
yeah,
Sierra
she was
Leone.
like, you are from Sierra Leone. We are descendants of kings. Like we have our when she goes up to Augusta, she's like, money, I got that. I don't need that. What I need is for us to have access.
Mhm.
And so that's what they were looking for. So they had the money and the means. It's just everything was still segregated, right? And so they're looking for that integration of truly being indoctrinated into English society.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was interesting. I like how they also threw in some Asian people in there too. They were there in the background. I didn't really see any South Asian people. It just seemed more like
I mean, that would make sense at that point in time, I think,
mhm,
because then, and here's the history buff in me
do it.
trying to, like, come up to the forefront. I don't think by this time,
Have they gone to India yet and done all that stuff?
I'm pretty sure they were in the process of colonizing India, but I don't know if if they were as established in India where, like, people were starting to travel back and forth
Okay.
yet.
Fair.
So I think that's definitely part of it. It's just that, I'm sure England was in India. I'm not sure that India people from India had started traveling back and forth between England and India, like, in mass, like we see by the time we get to the Sharma sisters, basically,
Mhm.
which is years and
Got
years
it.
later.
Got it. And I also love the reference to the Duke of Hastings when they pull up to Danbury's house and they're like, "So what are we gonna do?" And they're like, "Oh, the Smythe Smiths are downstairs, and so is the Duke of Hastings." What
Yeah.
I did not like is that you can't tell who the Duke of Hastings
You
is.
really can't, and I really wanted to see his wife. I wanted to see the Duke's mother because
Hmm.
she said that that was her best friend.
Right.
Remember?
So were they the couple that was in the forefront
I
then?
have I
Maybe?
have no idea, but I know that in the first season, Danbury said that the Duke's mother was her best friend or one of her best
Yeah.
friends. And also this idea that, like, Lady Danbury, we're gonna talk about her in a minute. She's never talked about her children. We have now seen her in 2 labor rooms. She was there when the Duke was born, and she was there when King George the Fourth was born.
Yes. And like that when I talked about surprises earlier, not just the plot twist, but even this, the fact that I did not know that Charlotte had children and had that many children
She had
and
15 children.
that Danbury had children at all. Cause I feel like if they are mentioned in the first two Bridgerton seasons, I did not go back and rewatch. So if they are mentioned, I definitely forgot about it. And it was not in the most significant way where I'm like, okay, because you don't see them. They're not
Yeah.
around. With all the balls and all the seasons that we go through, we do not see these folks. And I'm just like, okay.
The only royalty we see is the Queen Charlotte's nephew, Friedrich, who we see in the first episode of first season as, like, a main character-ish, or a secondary character, who is directly mentioned in the second season, in the last episode when Queen Charlotte is like, "Hey, Edwina, I have a nephew that you might like." It's like, you also have sons who are not married.
And now we're mad because our sons don't have a legitimate marriage. Like, that's crazy.
That's
That's
so wild
crazy.
to me.
Also, is that Adolphus's son? Friedrich? Do we think?
Um Oh, I never thought about that, maybe.
I don't remember if she
He
says
was
she
from
had any other
Prussia.
siblings.
He was from Prussia. Um,
Yeah.
hmm?
The nephew?
Friedrich was from Prussia, I believe. I don't think he was from Germany, but at
Hmm.
that point in time, if I'm being honest, the boundaries between Prussia, Germany, and all those areas are like very blurry to me.
Hmm.
Um, but that's she said it's her nephew. So you know what?
Could be. I don't remember if she said she had any other siblings, so I'm not sure if it's just them two or if there was any other siblings. But it could be, maybe. I don't know.
That's my headcanon now. That's Adolphus's
Go
son.
for it. Go for it.
I love it.
All right, let's talk about some of our favorite moments. You
I
want to
mean,
start?
yes,
Yes,
I'm
go.
very I'm very good with buttons. I was like, I have some buttons too, sir.
Georgie.
Georgie, Father George.
Behave. Farmer George. That was a great one. I
I was
love.
shocked. I was like, where did he get this swag, this riz from? Like,
He said, "Put me in, coach. I'm ready. Let's do it." So when I'm in, I'm all in. It's all good. I loved when Dan well at that point they're Mr. Danbury, Mrs. Danbury. When they pull up to the wedding and they get out of the carriage and Mr. Danbury's like, "Do not gawk like a peasant. Behave as though you've been here before." I loved it because when he said it, my brain translated to like, "Act like you've been here before." Like, don't do that. So I love that how they kind of took modern day language and then brought it back in and stuff. So
yeah.
I appreciated that. Lord Danbury, seeing her making her decision to not marry any further, that was to me that was a pivotal moment because I we all we know is that she was married at some point in time, right? She's got money, and then we don't know what happens. So now seeing that she consciously made a choice that that was my first and last marriage. I am not having any more kids. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just living my life for me. That is kind of messed up. It was like she's like that part of my life is over. Kids, yeah, we're done. Like I'm gonna go live my life. I thought that was great to see her go through that. So that was a great moment, I thought. Um
Uh, so it was a what really makes that moment so great is that, and this is people are like they want like a Lady Danbury spinoff. It's because like in that world, for you to make that decision, that's almost a death
mhm,
sentence. You're almost like committing economical suicide by being a woman with children and choosing not to marry again. It's
right.
unheard of. And so she was like, I'm gonna step off on faith and I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna just not marry and figure it out. And I would love to see how she navigated that moving forward.
This
The
should
other
get
thing I love too is that Lady Danbury, I don't know if you noticed this, but in both, maybe it was definitely in the first season, maybe in the second season, I don't remember, but the first season, Lady Danbury threw the first ball of the season. I think it might be tradition now that she does it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I didn't put that together, but I love that. If that's the case. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she
Oh,
definitely threw the first ball of the season in the first
nice.
season. Yeah.
Get it, get it, get it. The Just George moment when they
Just
first
George.
meet in the garden. Like,
Just
I'm just
George.
George. But what I also liked about that moment is that it's a phrase, it's a moment in time that one pulls them together, but
Mhm.
also can be weaponized. So
Mm,
when they're supposed to spend their wedding night together,
yeah.
he's like, "I am your king." She was like, "Oh, my bad. I thought you was just George."
That was such a beautiful black woman petty thing to say.
Yeah.
It was oh, it was scrumptious. It was so good. It was almost as good as, like, her saying, "So you gonna go hang out with your little friends?" Like, it was
Yeah.
almost as good as that. Oh, it was so good. I'm sorry, I thought you was just George.
I thought you were just George. I loved that. So I like when you can take that kind of a moment and use it multiple ways. So I was into that.
Mhm.
Brimsley and Reynolds, the
Their whole
dance at the
storyline.
end, their
Yeah,
whole storyline, but that dance in the end,
so
so
sweet.
I will always love you. Mm, my tears welled up. They welled up. It didn't spill out, but they welled up.
It
I was
welled
just like,
up when we saw Brimsley doing it by himself. Like, when he
oh,
was yeah, that's when I was like,
oh,
"Oh, it's
my
not life's
heart.
not fair. He
It's
deserves to be
not.
happy and loved too."
It's not fair. That was, oh my gosh,
It was
heart wrenching.
heartbreaking.
Um, Charlotte watching George in the garden with his shirt on. Bro, her face was one with the glass, like nose puffed up.
You ever see videos of like toddlers trying to like lick ice cream through glass? That's exactly what that looked like. And it was like, ma'am, you just saw him naked last night.
Thirsty, thirsty, and I loved it because if your girl don't look at you like that, what are y'all doing?
She was ready to lick the glass.
She was ready to lick the glass, bro. I love that. You're not a simpering girl. Dan
That pep talk.
Danbury Danbury to Charlotte. You have a greater purpose. You are over here worried about the approval of this man when there are bigger things at stake. Get your head in the game. You are not a simpering girl. And I think that's going to be one of my personal mantras going forward. Anytime when I've been sitting in my depression for too long, I'm like, you are not a simpering girl. You had your time. Pull it together.
Get it together.
Figure it out, please.
Lady Danbury is really she is on some like Steve Rogers level inspirational speaking and like speaking life into people. Because in the MCU, like he's supposed to be like really good at just doing it off the dome or whatever. Everyone's
Yeah.
like, "Wow, you're really good at that." Lady Danbury, obvious, she is like the grandmother of like women's empowerment, basically, is how I'm
She's a whole
seeing her now.
activist out here.
She really
She's
is.
a whole activist for her
She
gender, her race, everything. She
she really
carrying the city
is.
on her back, boy.
She really is. One of my other favorite moments I'm gonna save until we get deeper into the Danbury
Okay.
Violet plot later. But yeah, let's keep it moving. So one of the things I love that the Bridgerton world does is they stay very true to the time by using the same instruments and same types of music, same types of dances, but they do pop song covers so that it's still familiar to us. So we can still, our subconscious is like, I know that song. It's gonna evoke an emotion out of me, but it's not so jarring that it takes you out of the world. So let's talk about some of our favorite needle drops from the season. I'll let
Mhm.
you I'll let you lay these out. I didn't actually hear all of these,
You
honestly.
didn't?
No,
Oh
I
man.
heard some of these, but I didn't hear all of them.
Do you want me to just list them all out and then
Yeah,
we'll
list them.
pick it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get Halo by Beyonce, If I Ain't Got You, Alicia Keys, Deja Vu, Beyonce, Run the World, Beyonce, Nobody Gets Me, SZA, and I Will Always Love You, Whitney Houston. Which ones did you not hear?
I heard If I Ain't Got You because there's no way miss the intro to
Yeah,
that song, you cannot miss it. Um, I saw the I Will Always Love You pop up on the screen. I watch with subtitles.
same.
So I knew that was happening, and of course I heard it too. I didn't hear any of the other ones, like, off
Okay.
the rip. But I do love that there's so many Black women,
Mm-hmm.
songs that are, like, speaking to exactly what's going on the screen.
Yeah. So Halo plays when the king is like, I have a gift for you after the wedding, and they go to Buckingham House.
Mm,
So while
mhm.
they're in the carriage ride, when they're walking out of the wedding, they're in the carriage ride, Halo's playing. Um, Deja Vu, dang, when does that play? I forgot.
Ba-doom, boom, boom, ba-doo-doo-doo,
I,
ba-doom, boom,
I
boom,
feel like
boom.
it's one of their love making scenes, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that would make sense.
I can't remember. Run the World plays when Danbury is riding Sir Ledger.
Is that when it plays?
It plays during that stretch of the episode.
I love that.
And then Nobody Gets Me plays during their final dance in
Oh, at the end.
the
Mm,
season. Yeah.
mhm.
That was my favorite one. That one and I Will Always Love You, those two I think were my faves. Cause like the Nobody Gets Me, it's at this moment where Charlotte fully understands what she has
It's
married into.
yeah, what she signed up for, yeah.
And not only that, but George fully understands that this woman is here for me no matter what. and they have finally accepted each other and decide to lean onto each other. Look
Mhm.
at me. It's just me and you. No one else is here. Nobody gets me like you. I was like, ah, yes. I'm playing that at my wedding. That got me. That
Not
got
for
me.
nothing. I think my reception hour, like my what do they call it?
Cocktail hour?
Cocktail hour might just be Bridgerton songs.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I definitely want like strings playing
I
pop
know.
music.
For those of you that
Specifically.
I'm just gonna tell everyone now. So for anyone who doesn't know, Nessa is dead set on having a four-string quartet play "Back That Thing Up" by Juvenile at her wedding/reception. I don't We don't
Wow.
know where it'll be placed yet in the order of events, but, she fully intends on having people drop it low to a string quartet, and, me being who I am, I'm gonna make sure that that happens.
Yeah.
So, when that happens, we'll be sure to, post it on all socials for
Wait, I need to start saving for that budget right now. I just need a four-piece string quartet just to play that.
You might be lucky in the next Bridgerton season, they might just do it for you.
Ah, I mean, I'm sure there is a version, but I want it live.
Oh, you want it live, that's true.
I
Yeah.
want to set the scene. Like I that I want to set the scene because I know a lot of times like we're getting off tangent, but really quick, I know a lot of times like the wedding couple don't pop in on their cocktail hour, but I want to be part of my cocktail hour, and
Hmm.
so I want those songs in particular to happen during the cocktail hour, so I want to be around for that
The cocktail hour is usually
when
to
they take
keep the
pictures.
guests yeah, to keep the guests occupied while everyone else is taking pictures,
Yeah. But
so
I wanna be I don't know, because I feel like, yes,
what
I
if
do want the pictures, but I wanna be part of it. I wanna be drinking on my liquor too.
do the pictures and then okay, we'll make the cocktail hour, hour and a half. So you can do the pictures, and then we'll just make sure that, like what if you walk in to back that thing up on the quartet?
Oh, that'd be great.
So you and your man could do that.
That'd be great.
Yeah. See?
Dum, 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 dum.
Yes.
Okay, alright. So you only do
Uh,
it if I ain't got you, and I will always love you.
yeah, but, that's
It's
fine.
all good. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. Now when you go back and watch it, you can hear out for it.
So, I am definitely going to go back, and this actually segues really nicely into
Mhm.
one of our next, like, buckets of what we're gonna talk about. I fully plan on going back and rewatching the first 2 seasons, most
Yes.
likely in preparation for when the 3rd official Bridgerton season comes out, but I
Mhm.
cannot wait to go back and watch those seasons with this new knowledge about everyone's backstory. So, even just a little bit, like, from thinking about what I witnessed in the Queen Charlotte story, thinking about to the previous seasons, you know, when Edwina calmed down the king when he came out of nowhere thinking that it was his wedding day, which is also like super cute because he was like, I'm
Mhm.
sorry to keep you waiting. Like now you actually saw their wedding day. It's like, oh my goodness, like that
I
you can
know.
connect that now. But like Queen Charlotte seeing herself in Edwina, like being
Yeah.
able to like automatically just this like protective like spirit turn on, and Edwina was able to calm him down just like she would. Um, so seeing that was like, just thinking about that was amazing. Talking about friendship being the basis of a true match with the Duke and Daphne. And then
Mhm.
especially the dance between Kate and Anthony in the last season when Anthony was like, "It's just me and you, like we're the only
Oh.
ones here." And then if you saw like if in that clip when that happens, Brimsley is watching too, and he looks at Queen Charlotte to
Mhm.
like see her reaction to it, and I'm just like, they have been
Mhm.
building up to this for so long.
They married those 2 shows together beautifully. They
Really, really
definitely
well.
did.
Yeah.
I'm glad they did that. Alright.
Any nitpicks?
I mean, I think we kind of said them, just wishing that we knew about the kids. This other generation that is not really present or discussed. I think that would have been helpful. But I almost feel like that was it's not even a nitpick for this season. It's more of the previous seasons, I
Previous
guess.
seasons, yeah.
That was my big nitpick that I had.
My nitpick was, I wanna say it was the first episode, you see Violet Bridgerton with 2 babies, 2
Yeah.
grandkids.
Hmm.
I'm assuming they're grandkids. I'm assuming the older one is Daphne and the Dukes. Who is the second baby? Where does baby come from? If it's the middle of the winter, that baby looked like it was at least 6 months, which means that, or 4, whatever. That baby was born at a point where someone should have been pregnant last summer.
I'm thinking it has to be Daphne and the Duke's second baby
I get that, but she wasn't pregnant in the last thing. So I'm just like,
that we know of. Dun dun dun. I don't know. Um, that we know of
fine.
because it can't be Anthony because they're on honeymoon.
They're still on honeymoon, but here's the thing. If they're still on honeymoon, to me that means that the last summer season was when they got together.
Hmm.
And if Daphne didn't show up being pregnant until after that, how does she already have a baby before Christmas? That's like 4 or 5 months old.
Because TV show gone TV show.
Whatever. It bothers
I
me.
don't
It's a
know.
nitpick.
I don't know, but I understand why it throws you off. I understand why it's a thing.
Bothers
I
me.
just when I saw it, I just accepted it as Daphne and the Duke's second baby, and I was just like, okay.
Where does baby come from?
All right, let's. Okay, so we've given you guys the overview. We've talked about the show at large, right? And so let's kind of zero in some of these storylines that we do get. Let's start off with our queen, our main character, Queen Charlotte, right? And so the major things, well, some of the major things that I really wanted to point out about her is that like we mentioned before, she's coming from Germany to England and has to now adjust to these new societal norms, right? She comes from an elevated family, but not necessarily royalty, and it's going to look different than English royalty, right?
Mm.
So when she comes in, Augusta is like, we're not going to use your wedding dress. I picked one out for you. It's more traditional, more English. I don't want that little, gauche, rah rah, froofy, whatever thing you trying to bring through. We're not doing that. Right. So her adjusting to that. And we don't get a sense of what their Germany is like because when she does arrive to the ton, right, she doesn't really notice or seem to care about the divide amongst the races. So it makes me wonder what was life like for her in Germany, or was
That's
she
a
just
good point.
cultured?
I mean, the fact that they were elevated status to the point where she was good enough to marry the King of England lets me know that that divide probably wasn't as strong or as apparent where she's from.
Yeah, probably. And she's
Yeah,
17.
she's 17, and it would make sense why Danbury would have to say to her, "Hey, black people here don't have the rights that you have. Can you
Yeah.
help a sister out?" Literally
If you weren't queen, life for you would look very different.
here,
And
yeah.
you need to know
Mhm.
that. So watching her try to adjust, try to fit in as she's being isolated from her family, no friends, and you start to really think and realize, like, dang, life must have really been lonely for her until present day. Because you see her now, the king is not around, and she has Brimley, but Brimley is like the closest, not even the closest thing she has to a friend, but like that's the person who's literally been 5 paces behind her since she's been 17,
And
right?
she's never even asked him why he never got married. That
Which
pissed
makes
me.
sense.
It makes sense because boundaries of your position and yada yada yada, but I thought it was a beautiful way to further double down that like she has so much on her shoulders that she can't even check in on the people that we presume she cares about, Brimley
Yeah.
and her kids, but she
Hmm.
can't even show that emotional affection towards them in a way that would help shape how she interacts with them in a more motherly way because
Yeah.
she has to be so focused on covering up for the king.
Yeah. That's her. She is there to serve the king, just
Mhm.
like everybody else. It's just in a different way. And you realize how lonely she is. She doesn't have her kids around her. She has friends in Danbury and Violet, but they can only be but so close, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Even when she's on her honeymoon, she's like, "Well, can I go to the opera? Can I go to the Modis? Can I do this? Can I?" And they're like, "No, you're on your honeymoon. You stay here." Okay, but my
Mhm.
man's not even here. Like,
Mhm.
can I have a friend over? Can I phone a friend?
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, you are here alone playing chess by yourself and having other people pick oranges for you." So how do you create those bonds, those attachments when everyone is your subject
Mhm.
versus your friend? And so I liked seeing how that tied in with Danbury, right? She's like, I've been acting as your subject, not as your friend, but I want to be your friend, and trying to forge that bond, forge that relationship. It's just crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me. Um, she's the bridge, right? The bridge between the races. And when she pops in, doesn't even know it. Augusta is like rubbing her face, like, "Oh, that's you. That's not makeup. That's all you." That broke my heart
Mm.
because at first I thought she was like rubbing the mole, and I was just
Yeah, me
like,
too.
"Oh, okay, like maybe it's seen as an imperfection, whatever, or something." But when she's just like, "Oh, that's your color," I was just like, "Oh my god!" Like I don't know how I would react in this
And
situation.
what's interesting too to me is that, like, the actress naturally, I think, is a little bit lighter than, like, the makeup they put on her for the show.
Mhm,
Um, what's interesting is I feel like it's obvious to me the actress has some black in her, whatever that is.
mhm,
Her and to me, to me, the actress who plays young Queen Charlotte is probably naturally very close to the way the original Queen Charlotte probably looked. Like, it's hard to say with, like, the color variations, but even if the Queen Charlotte in real life was as light as the actress who plays Queen Charlotte, they still would have been like, "No, she's too black."
yeah, 100. Oh yeah, 100%. If you're
100%.
not like literally passing, like white passing, I'm sure it was, and that might have been what Augusta thought she was getting. She probably thought
Mhm.
she was getting like a white passing black person, and then
Mhm.
and Charlotte pulls up and she's like, "Still too dark, still
Mhm.
too dark."
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was just like, dang, ooh.
Yeah.
But that's so much pressure to have on you, to have Danbury turn to you and be like, "Do you know what you represent? Like, do you know what you can do for people?" And I do like, so the one thing I do like about Augusta, right? She is the one who at this point in time has to speak for the king.
Yeah.
Anytime she's in these rooms with these men, she's like, "Well, the king says," and the king says, and they take it as law. And so when I think Lord Brute is like, "This is a problem. Like, she's darker than we imagined. We can't let this happen. We need to find somebody else. We need to cancel the wedding." She was like, "Well, the palace says it's okay." And so if the palace says it's okay, then what does that mean? Everybody's like, yes, cool, school's all right. You know, we don't want no smoke. We ain't got no problems. It's okay. And so, and then to take it a step further and then start giving out titles. And she's like, we're going to show the town, we're going to show the ton that this is okay. We're going to invite more black people and people of color, and we're going to give them titles. But then we quickly see that leads to issues where it's like, okay, well, now Danbury's dead. Do these titles stick? Does it pass on? Was it
Yeah.
so?
Yeah, before we jump to that real quickly, there's one thing about Lady Augusta, Dowager Princess Augusta,
Mm-hmm.
that striked me. This is kind of like the whole Abraham Lincoln thing. I think there's a good parallel.
Go for
So
it.
a lot of people, there are mixed opinions about Abe Lincoln and his sentiment towards slavery. He was the president that signed the order to end antebellum slavery in the United States. A lot of people praise him for doing that, saying that he must have been like anti-slavery and like all that other jazz. There's another group of individuals who feel that Abraham Lincoln did that because politically he had to. He did it not because he wanted to, but because politically he needed to in order to make sure that the North, yada, 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 X, Y, and Z. This feels very similar to that,
Yeah.
where it can almost, I feel like it can be perceived that Dowager Princess Augusta must not have been as racist as everybody else. That's a full out lie. You saw what she did with
Yeah.
his with her skin. She just loved her son more and was
Yeah.
more willing, she was less willing to give up her legacy, her lineage, giving up the throne than keeping black people out of, than
Society.
keeping them out of society, basically. And it feels like I was, when I was watching it, I was like, I hope no one thinks that she's like a savior because of this, because she didn't do it for them. She
No.
totally did it for her, to cover her own behind, because she didn't do her due diligence to see how black the person was before they showed up.
They didn't send no portraits.
No portraits,
She didn't get no intel, send no spies, like
nothing.
nothing.
And you could tell how desperate she was because they planned the wedding for 6 hours after she got there. They didn't
Yeah.
even give it like a week to breathe.
No. They said you getting married today.
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 So just wanted to throw that out there that,
Yeah.
contrary, like, the ends don't always justify the means in this space, meaning, like, yes, it's great that black people in that society eventually gained access to the elitism that, they rightly deserved along with everybody else. But it was done for not altruistic reasons, for very
Yeah.
selfish reasons, which was to keep her kid on the throne, basically.
Very much so. I think another thing important to mention about Charlotte is she's very smart, very well learned, right? Very cultured
Quick.
and all of that. And not only that, very outspoken, more
Mhm.
outspoken than I would expect anyone like entering that type of society to be. But then they tolerated it. They tolerated a lot of it, which was also like shocking to me. Like the fact that she even though she goes along with Augusta's wishes about the wedding at first, the
Mhm.
fact that she even felt comfortable enough to like voice her opinion, I was like, oh, wait a minute now.
She
The
doesn't
fact
know any better.
that she doesn't know any better, and then the fact that like she felt comfortable enough to have that back and forths with the king um on their wedding night in that kind of way. Like I thought once he's like, no, I'm not doing this the second time, like I thought she was just been like, okay. She was like, no, we got married. Do we supposed to do what married people do? I don't know what married people do, but we supposed to do that.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I love that from the beginning she is this outspoken person, and as she gets older, you see that in the present day. You see that in the present day queen, but it's nice to see where it started into where it ended up, where she's coming in, and then at a certain point in the season, it's like, you brought me here to be queen. I'm going to be queen.
Yep.
And this is what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
And so I loved watching her evolve into the queen that she is today. I thought that was
Yeah, it's really interesting the calculations that the Dowager Princess made, because you would think, similar to what Danbury said, how she was groomed for Lord Danbury,
hmm
that there would be women in the English society, high society, that would be groomed for the king, for that family, to run the constituents the way that that family will want to run the constituents, basically. By
yeah.
going so far out, 6 7 hours away, to find someone who doesn't even look like you and say, okay, you're a queen now, just to cover up the fact that you didn't think you'd find someone who you, and that's so weird to me. Like, I think that there still be so many women who would love to marry King George, even if they knew what he was suffering from
Yeah.
before they had the opportunity to do it. What?
Yeah.
Cal well, who was the chick that was trying to get Prince Friedrich? Um
Cressida?
Cressida. Like, people like her. Shoot him like, oh, he's mad. I don't care. That's fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, I get to be queen. Let's do this. They
Right.
don't. They don't care. And so it just felt so odd that they would have to go so far out to do that. But anyways, I
Yeah.
digress.
She would have done it because she could be queen. But
Yeah.
the thing about Charlotte is like she would have done it just cause. She was like, what? Is he ugly? Is he stupid? Is he dull? Like, what's the problem? Like, I could work with that. Like, just
Mhm.
tell me. That's the whole thing. Is
Yeah.
like she wouldn't even have been as mad if they had just told her from the beginning. She would just been like, oh, okay, well, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
But they try to keep it from her. And then we find out why she loves Pomeranians, right? In present day, she's got a million of them. And it's because Georgie gave it to her as a gift, even though she hated it in the beginning, but grows to love them. Any last things you want to say about Queen Charlotte before we quickly move on?
I'm sure something else will pop up and I'll just say it.
Oh
So
yeah.
let's just keep moving.
You want to take over Brimsley?
So, definitely want to carve out some time to talk about Brimsley
Mhm.
because he is very much a secondary character in the first 2 seasons, but we see how much him and his counterpart on the king side, Reynolds, how much that they shape this love story, basically. It
Mhm.
is so interesting to me how dedicated these 2 are to their counterparts, like, instantly. Like, Brimsley instantly is like, "I will do anything for this woman,"
Yep. 5
which is
paces
amazing.
behind.
But I'm always 5 pa and not and yes, he does it because he has to, but there's obviously a point I think it was the point where, like, you see him holding out his hand behind her, like, he
Oh,
wanted to, like, hold her and basically, like, like, physically show her that he's, like, thinking about her and that she's not
yes.
alone, but
And she
obviously he
feels
can't.
it. She feels it because she stops, but she
Yeah.
doesn't quite look back. But you can see her head tilt a little. And
Mhm.
I was like, she knows. She
Yeah.
knows.
It's more than just a job to him, like, he actually cares about her to the point where he, like, put his relationship on the line. They both did. Him
Yeah.
and Reynolds put their relationship with each other on the line in order to protect or try to protect the hearts of the people that they are sworn to protect, and I just thought that that
Mhm.
was so beautiful and so
Yeah.
tragic that they're not able to share in the same kind of love publicly like everyone else can.
So
It was such a tragic story, and, like, justice for Brimsley is
but their love was so pure too. Like
It
even
really
when
was.
Reynolds is like standing outside of George's meeting with the doctor in that cellar or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And what's his name? And Brimsley's like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just down here." And he's like, I'm not meeting. I don't have any other writers, is what he says, right? Because people are walking back and forth. He's like, there are no other writers. I'm just down here. And
Yeah.
I love that because that's them acknowledging, like, there's like, we go together,
Yeah.
right? We may not go together, but we go together. Like, there better not be no one else. And Brimsley tries to play it off like, well, I don't care if there's any other writers. I just need to know what you're doing down here. And the way Reynolds tries to reassure him, I'm like, oh, and then
Yeah.
when they're standing outside of um
The
the
doors.
the doors, the dining doors, and Brimsley reaches for his hand and Reynolds pulls away, but then he slowly brings his hand back and they caress pinkies. And I was just like, God damn it. Like, so sweet, so
It's
pure.
so sweet, so pure, so just like just no malice with either of them. They just want everyone around them to be happy and pure. And they want what's best for the kingdom and all that stuff too, but um the way Reynolds was willing to risk his relationship, his love to protect his king's secret,
Yeah.
knowing that he knew that if he told Brimsley it was probably going to be okay.
Mhm.
But to just to really be like, "No, I'm taking this, I will not share this with you," is like, that is loyalty, that's some Hufflepuff stuff, okay?
I don't know if you've seen this, but have you seen the comparisons to Beauty and the Beast? Where
No.
they
Oh, yeah.
are like Lumiere and I forget the other guy's name, but the one that turns into the clock. And they're like,
Yeah,
do they remind you of anyone?
so funny.
And I was just like, oh, that's funny. Because like they have this quabble or whatever. And like they're fighting, and so they put it like next to Lumiere and the clock dude fighting, and I was just
Yeah,
like, that's perfect, and
it's
I love
hilarious, it's so funny. The one other thing I wanna say about Brimsley and Reynolds is that, in the show, we never learn what happens to Reynolds or, like, We know that Brimsley never got married, and he still reminisces about, the good times with Reynolds, but we don't know what actually happened. I learned that there was a scene written with an older Reynolds.
Yes.
They never filmed it, but
Mhm.
essentially it was supposed to be like Reynolds is still around, he's older. It's, like, ambiguous as to if they're together, but just, like, there's no, like, hard feelings between them, they acknowledge each other and keep it moving, I think, like, walking down the hall or something like that.
Yeah, like they're not together. Whatever happened through the decades just pushed them apart. Their
Mhm,
duties, the fact that, it's still a hangable offense to be homosexual.
mhm,
And so yeah, I when I heard about that, I wish they would have filmed it. I wish they wouldn't have left it so open,
mhm.
because if you're just strictly taking the facts that they give you, because just because he says they were supposed to film it, the fact is they didn't,
For a
right?
reason, yeah.
They didn't. And so now it's leaving the audience to believe, basically the only deduction you can make is that Reynolds is dead, because he doesn't show up
We
in
don't see him,
the
yeah.
house. You don't see him. So the only assumption to make is that he's dead, you know? And so I, I'd
Yeah.
I'd rather have the tragedy of they see each other and can't be together than him be, or I don't know, or make a choice. I don't know. I
I
didn't.
think so I think the other piece of that too is that, like, by leaving that so open, you also there's so many possibilities for offshoots now and getting other backstories, like, can Brimsley find love again? That would be amazing.
Nah, that ain't gonna happen.
I think it would be amazing if it did happen, I'm just saying. It would
The,
be, like, really cool if it did.
the thing I found interesting is when she was like, "Did you ever marry?" And I was in my brain, I was like, "Are they
How
allowed
would
to?"
but also, how would you not know that?
She would have heard of it, right? It'd have been like, "Hey, I'm getting married this weekend."
Or it would've been like, "Where's Brimsley?" "Oh, he's off on his honeymoon." "Okay." Right?
we
Like,
He's on vacation. But I wonder if they're allowed to marry. Like, is it like the Kingsguard kind of thing in Game of Thrones, where like, are you allowed to marry? Are you?
I
But I guess
don't
you are if she's asking.
so, no, I think you are allowed to marry. So, quick aside, I watch The Crown sometimes. I
Mhm.
haven't watched this latest season yet because I'm not ready for Princess Diana, but in
Mhm.
previous seasons, we see that position, the person who's, like, their right hand that's in charge, like, their caretaker almost,
Yeah.
um, that the one who was for, uh, Prince Philip yeah, Prince Philip, he was, like, buddy buddy with Prince Philip, and he had a wife,
Okay.
and his wife divorced him. It was, like, a huge scandal. She divorced him because he was running around with a whole bunch of girls while they were on tour together, and it
Mm,
became a huge scandal because the assumption is if the queen's husband is running around with a dude who has a whole bunch of ladies around him and they're doing all these things, that he must be doing it too. And so
mm,
it like sparked this whole thing about is Prince Philip cheating on Queen Elizabeth, basically. So they
okay.
exist. It was just, in that particular part of the storyline, the wife was just like, "You are never here. Why are we even together? You are always with the king." And he's like, "I have to be. That's my job." And she's like, "Well, I don't want to be married to somebody with that job. Peace out."
Nice.
So yeah.
So I'd rather be by myself.
Hmm.
Um. All right. Is that it for
That's
Brimsley?
it for Brimsley. Let's keep it pushing. We got two more to go. Let's dig into Danbury again.
That
We've
is our
talked about
favorite.
Danbury nonstop, but just to dig in a little bit more, we learned that her marriage was an arranged marriage, that she was promised to Mr. Danbury from the age of 3.
Three, three.
The
Because
age of
I
3.
feel like I
It
feel
was
like her and
given it was
Charlotte are the same age.
it
Ish.
was given I think she's older than Charlotte. She has 4 kids already.
What that mean?
That's a great point, actually.
What does that mean?
That's a
I
great
mean,
point.
I think she's. I also do think she's a bit older than Charlotte, but not by much.
No, not by
I
much.
would
I wouldn't
say
say more than,
maybe
like, 5 years, but no
yes.
more than 5 years, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. No more than
Yeah.
5 years, and
And I
so
would say that Violet is probably no more than 5 years younger than Charlotte, so there's probably no more than a 10-year difference between Danbury and Violet.
that Violet is. Say it again.
I said if Charlotte is around 17, I don't see Violet being any younger than, like, 12.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I don't
Yeah.
think so either because yeah, because I remember the mom was like, "Oh, she's not ready to be out in society yet," and they
Mhm.
usually come out in society when they're ready to marry and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, she's definitely like younger than them and everything. I would say, yeah, I would put Danbury somewhere around 21,
22,
somewhere
yeah.
like that. And her youngest is 4.
Mhm.
So, that's oh my god, now that I'm doing the math and really thinking about it, I'm like,
And
she
actually the whole, like so, the assumption that I'm making is that if she was promised to him at 3, the normal courting traditions of, like, coming out in society and stuff probably didn't apply to her.
no.
She probably as soon as she got her first menstrual cycle, she was, like, shacked up with him, probably, you
Oh.
know? Which is
Yeah.
interesting because one of the things that had me, like, laugh unexpectedly when she was like, "Oh my goodness, what if he puts one of his another one of his big-headed
Yeah,
babies in
baby.
me?"
She's like, "I cannot do this anymore," and she takes a bath after each time. I'm like scrubbing ferociously, just get the hot water. I'm surprised we weren't seeing her drink moon tea and stuff, honestly.
Mm.
She was putting a whole lot of faith
She really was.
in that his swimmers role. But yeah, the fact that she was groomed for him, right?
Yeah.
She wears gold because that's his favorite color.
Mhm.
She drinks port wine because that's his favorite wine. Everything about her life was for this man. And so I love that after he dies, that's where we get the Danbury purple come out, right? Like after she does the mourning wearing black and everything like that, when she shows up after that, purple. You're getting the purples, you're getting brighter colors. And I was just like,
But still dark to kinda show that, like to me in this world, I don't know if this is a thing, but, like, brighter colors is like, "I'm open." I'm like, "Come talk to me. I am, like, ready to socialize." And she's like, No,
I think,
don't want
yeah,
any of it."
it depends because I feel like in the present day Bridgerton, right? The Featheringtons are made fun of because of their bright patterns and how
But
everything's so
really
gaudy.
because of the yellow, I think.
And
Like, Daphne was wearing light blues and whites and, like, all that stuff, which is still brighter than a deep dark purple.
but it's still like a muted kind of color,
Fair,
right? It's still like a
fair.
muted pure I
Mhm,
stand out, but I'm not trying to stand out kind of color
mhm,
versus you're getting their yellows and pinks and all their bright stuff and then all the patterns and butterflies and whatever and everything that they had on them.
mhm.
So uh, but it was interesting to see that transformation to see her go from the gold to the purple and I was just like you go, girl. I was trying to establish a pattern in clothing with Charlotte, but I really couldn't because I just feel like she wore every color across the board.
So the the thing about Charlotte's clothing that I recognize is that she never changed the way she dressed over time.
Mm,
The
that's true.
style of dress changed. Like, by the time we get to Bridgerton with Daphne, empire waist dresses were more in line than having, like, corsets and stuff like that, but she was still wearing corsets, and it's probably because so that when George snaps out of it on
She looks
occasion,
like her.
he looks like her, and she doesn't look like he's missed any time.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to talk about how Danbury's marriage is very different from what we see with Charlotte and
Mhm,
Violet's marriage, right?
mhm.
Because even though Charlotte's marriage is tumultuous, there's love. There's genuine love and affection there. Violet literally said, like, I had my soulmate. Like, that was the one great love. I don't think I will ever get anything on that comparison. Meanwhile, Danbury's been suffering since potentially the age of 13 or whatever it is.
11? Who knows?
Who knows? And so I thought it was interesting to have those three different examples of marriages and what those outcomes are. And so when you do see Danbury say, "Nah, I'm good. Adolphus, I don't need you. I'm cool." It you fully understand. And Danbury tells Violet, like, when I say you're lucky, like, that's not sarcasm. Like, legit, I'm jealous. You are
You
lucky.
you had someone that you got to love out loud and that got to love you out loud.
Mhm.
I've never experienced that ever.
Someone who
So,
truly cared for you and adored you.
out loud is very, very specific because we saw what happened with her and Mr. Ledger,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yes, we might as well talk about that.
let's do it.
So during the show, one of the plot twists that we get is that Danbury messes around with Violet's dad, Lord Ledger. And I I did not see this coming. I did not see this coming. I was just like, why? How? What are we really going for here? What are we doing? Um what were your what were your thoughts when this developed? Because I remember texting you, I'm like, girl, I think it's about to get crazy. Wait, give me a minute. Girl, it got crazy.
Yeah, I remember saying out loud, "What kind of Jerry Springer crap is this?"
Yeah.
And that's where my Jerry Springer thing came from, and I'm just
Mhm.
like I was very like, "Wait, how do I feel about this? How do I feel?" Like, I love Lady Danbury. From the first season of Bridgerton, I was like, "I want to be her when I grow up. I wanna have her confidence. I wanna
Yeah.
have the respect that people have for her. She does whatever the hell she wants, and people kinda just, like, leave her alone, which is
Mhm.
fantastic, and more importantly, she has so much influence over the ton that, like, it's insane. So, when I saw her in this particular position, at first I was like, "Okay, he's a married man." That's probably, like, the worst thing about it. Then it's like, okay, like, you just finished, like, mourning your husband, so to speak. It's kinda, like, really soon. 2, the real messed up thing about this, in my opinion, is that you are proactively trying to get Violet to open up to you in the present, and trying to get her to feel like she has a friend in you, and you've been keeping this secret from her for decades.
Decades on decades. I it was that was foul. I do want to say City Girls Up 1,000 though for the fact that his wife is racist and he messed around with a black chick who didn't previously have a title. So I'm down for that. But that's a good point, right? You messed around with one of your closest friends' fathers, but this was before you were friends.
Sure, but, like,
One can make that argument, but once you become friends, right? And now you're in the present day and you're like, oh no, you could talk to me, girl. Tell me your secrets. Let me know. Open
we can
up.
talk about sex with each other.
And then when she throws it back at you later on in the season, and like literally is like holding the birthday hat and is like, this is interesting. So tell me about, your lovers after your husband again. And you got the nerve to be like, I'm discreet. I was like, yo.
Which I respect. I respect a discreet,
Yeah. But I
people who
wonder,
move in silence, but, like,
yeah.
I also thought it was brilliant how she was like, "I am discreet. I had a chance with the queen's brother," and she's like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
Like,
you throw it off.
it's a
She dropped the bomb and ran. She said she dropped the bomb and ran. She's like, you worried about your daddy. I had a chance with Adolphus. And she's like, oh, okay, gotta go bye. Right?
So, th to me, the way that their storyline ended together was very ambiguous to me. How did you read, like, their final conversation together of the season?
I thought it was over. It was done. I thought it was a one and
Meaning
done. Like we had our tryst, right? We got it on, and then that was it.
No, I meant, between Danbury
Oh,
and Violet specifically,
oh,
because when the way they ended with the tea, it looked like Violet was trying to, like, set her up to, like, catch her in a lie,
yeah,
and it feels like Danbury figured it out,
yeah.
but her being like, "It was a wonderful memory," or something about that didn't feel resolute enough for me. Like, is Violet mad? Is she not mad? Is Danbury fessing up to it? Is she not fessing up to it? Like, what is happening here? And I just could not, and I thought it was brilliant that earlier in the season, Violet mentions that Eloise and Penelope are fighting
Yes. Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
show, like, another female friendship, like, with some tense
That's
things going
Roxford.
on.
Mhm.
Hmm?
And so I will say this. I think whichever direction it goes, I believe that they both know that the other knows. I think they
Mhm.
all know what's going on here,
Mhm.
but I think it could go one of two ways. I think it's we know what happened and we're going to ignore it and we're going to move on. It's in the past. It was a long time ago. I don't need any more details. I'm good. Or I can pretend I'm okay for now and next season I'm going to bring it up and it's going to be an issue between us. I feel like Violet is the type to hold a grudge, and because we see that right when all three women sit down, they have a chat, and she feels slighted by Danbury. She's avoiding her. She ain't answering her call. She ain't calling her back. She put on her D&D. You know what I'm saying? She not trying to chill with her, and like Danbury has to literally pop up on her, and so I think it could go either way, but
Mhm.
I'm leaning towards Violet is going to hold on to this and bring it back in the future.
I wonder if I wonder. I mean, I could say that, but I also think that can't imagine they won't take the opportunity to do this. Maybe Violet explores dating in some capacity, and then she understands the mental state or the emotional state that Danbury was in when
Mhm.
she was messing with her father, and she's like more forgiving because she understands, what it's like to be in that position or some sort.
I want to say
Potentially.
that, but she's also lost a husband already, right? And she didn't run off and go with anybody else. So I think she's
Yeah, but now
going
she's
to have
horny.
that.
She is.
She is horny now, yes. But I think she's still going to carry that with her as like putting herself on a pedestal, like, well, I went through that too and I didn't react that way, so you
That's a
could have
good
kept
point.
keep your legs closed to married men, is what she has. She's gonna kind of have that over her. But I think you're right on some level. I think she's going to go through some of the dating process and they're eventually going to repair their relationship, but I think
Mhm.
it's going to be fractured at some point.
I cannot wait to see Anthony be pissed off at his mother dating.
You think he'll be pissed? I don't know if he will. I think he'll be supportive.
I think that he'll have something to say as the leader of the family.
He'll have a lot of opinions,
Yeah.
but I think he'll be supportive at the end of the day of it all.
Yeah.
Um Okay, so she is also another person who's holding up this great experiment, right? Her husband has been bestowed this title of Lord, and immediately she's like, we need access. He needs to be invited to the hunts. I need the best seat at the operas. I want to walk into the finest shops. My kids needs to go to the best schools. I don't care about your money. We want the access and we want to be seen as the same level as you guys socially and economic.
So I will say, when you were just talking just now, it made me think. Okay, Lady Danbury, Agatha clearly didn't like her husband, or rather, she didn't like the situation she was in. I think it's hard for me to tell if she didn't like him as a person,
You didn't
or
like
she
him.
was just bitter about the situation she was placed in,
I don't
because
think
she
she liked
found
him at all.
herself missing him. Right at some point, she found herself missing what the life was like. I guess more specifically, the fact that she is still advocating for him throughout all of this, like, my husband needs access to all these things, is coming off as kind of Lady Featherton like having her own aspirations separate of her husband, but using her husband in order to reach that, was giving very strong, like, entrepreneurial Lady Portia Featherington vibes.
Absolutely, because that's the option that she has, right?
Mhm.
The only way I can elevate myself and my children is to make sure that my husband is elevated. But not only that, in elevating my husband, I can now elevate everybody else, right?
Mm,
Because if he's invited to the hunts, if he's invited to these things, if we are hosting balls, they can do it too.
mhm.
Right. So if he can get into the what was it, whites or whatever, that
Mhm.
that club, the
Gentleman
social
club.
club, the
Mhm.
gentleman's club, right? If they let him in, they've got to let everybody else in. So Absolutely. And like I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Like I love that she was farsighted enough to understand that this
Mhm.
is our moment and I'm going to leverage everything I got to make this happen.
That's really interesting because it could have gone a different way. The other time in pop culture, like movies and stuff, where you see someone who's been groomed from birth to be with the future king or like to be with someone coming to America, right? Oof, 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 right? That could have went way different.
That's true. That's
Whatever
true.
it is you like.
Yeah, and then it's like even after she does all that to find out that they're on the verge of being broke because now she's gotten him the estate. We've got the title, we've got the access. He can get into the gentleman's club, but now we have to spend money to do that.
Mhm.
And apparently he was exaggerating his fortune. And so
So where did she get money from then? Between then and now is my question.
that's my question. And that's something I hope that they answer as the seasons go on and as the show goes on. And I think that's why people are pushing for that Danbury spinoff because it's like, okay, between the time that you decide you are not going to marry anymore and then the present day, what are you doing in between then to,
Become a boss bitch.
yeah, and to get money? And granted, usually, yes, when you get a title, you get an estate, you get land, you usually get taxes off the land, but I don't know if that's the way it was set up for them because like when the duke and what's his name get married, right?
Mhm.
We go off and we see this land that Hastings own and
Mhm.
that the people do pay taxes to them and that's how they get paid and that's how it works. But
Mhm.
it kind of just looks like they gave Danbury a house and was like, okay, you can live here.
Yeah, it's unclear as to if it came with, like, people who would be paying into the estate. Well, I think that also depends on the title, right? A duke is different than a lord.
True.
So a duke, I think, comes with lands and, like, a little village or whatever. I'm sure a lord probably doesn't. That's more of, like, a political position, I think. But in
Mm-hmm.
any event, how does she make the money? And what's going on with her children? Like, will her son have to come back to claim his estate as Lord Danbury when she
At some
passes away?
point,
Is he
as
married? Does he have kids? Like, what's going to happen with the
as far as
Danbury
we
line?
Yeah, and as far as we know, like all her kids are shipped off somewhere else because Violet is like, "Oh, did your kids send these things to you?" And so we know that they're not around. I guess pretty much like Charlotte's kids, right? None of them are really around. They've been shipped off to wherever
But
the
her
heck,
children doesn't even come back for the summertime, which makes me think that
estranged.
they're they're at least estranged from the community at the minimum. Maybe not from their mother per se, but, like, they don't feel the need to be in London high society for whatever reason.
Mm, this is true, which I guess would make you think that they probably are married off and probably just living their own thing.
The
But
girls probably, but the boys is who I'm like, "Where is he? Is he in the Americas? Is he in Sierra Leone? Like, where is he in the world,
hmm,
and what is he doing?"
we have questions. We need answers.
We do.
Which leads to, is Danbury a good mother? We see a lot of examples of motherhood throughout this show, right? And in this universe. And so as particularly amongst these three, our three main characters here. And is she a good mom?
I think my question is, have I seen evidence of what I would call a good mother in this show yet? Everybody has
Violet.
issues to me. Violet, yes, but Violet almost lives almost too much in a dream world for me. Like, her never telling Daphne what sex was is like, "Come on." Like,
But
you're
that's
actually
that feels
not
part of the thing.
you're not really setting your kids up for success.
My parents never
You're
had the sex talk with me either.
and think about how your sexual life would have been a little bit different if they would have.
Charlotte's people didn't tell her about it. She walks up there, she's like, I don't know what married people do, but we supposed to do it. What's her name?
And
Danbury gotta sit there and draw.
she's a good drawer.
Them photos, them pictures and drawings are amazing. She
Yeah,
literally draws out the whole Kama Sutra for her.
she really did. She drew out every
Really?
position we saw her in with Lord Danbury and Mr. Ledger. Um, okay, so I guess the issue with motherhood in this point in time and what they portrayed to me is that like all of the mothers have been able to provide for their children. That's like the
Yeah.
base level. All of their children have fed, what have you. They're
Cared for.
educated, yada, yada, yada. The issue here is the emotional connection. And you
Yeah.
just don't see that with any of these mothers except
Hmm.
for Violet. But even Violet is not 100% there neither because of Daphne and her, like Anthony and her butt heads for a while and like all that other stuff too. Um, so is Danbury a good mom? I think Danbury did what had to be done. The same way as the queen. I feel bad that her 13 children feel like they've never been a mother to them. But when you understand her backstory and why is everybody calling me? My brother and my father called me. It's weird.
Yeah.
Um when you see what the queen had to focus on, you
Yeah.
kind of get it. It's sad when you see Edward hug her and he's like this is like the first time he's ever hugged his mom. That's like really really sad, but like
That's
when you
wild.
know her backstory, you kind of get it.
Right. What was it? When the granddaughter dies, and she's like, sorrows, sorrows, prayers. Yeah, that was messed up. I was like, yo, that's crazy. But then I feel like, so is the show trying to say something about women in power and motherhood? That if you have certain aspirations, certain goals, certain levels of power that you are in, that you can only give but so much to your children. Because I feel like we haven't completely seen, well, we haven't seen multiple examples of that. I think Violet's the closest thing where it's like, she is, her husband has died, so now, but she's not even like head of the household, right? Anthony's supposed to be head of the household, but she has to take up a lot of his responsibilities because he's out here whoring and frolicking around.
Well, she
uh
feels like she has to. She doesn't actually have to.
she feels like she has to, but she still makes time to like actually hang with her kids, be around her kids and talk to them and do those things. Whereas we don't see that. Danbury gets in the carriage with her 4-year-old son and he's like, so when are we gonna go back to nanny? And he's like, and she's like, I know you don't know me, but I'm your mom. And I was like, what conversation are we having right now? So
That
do you,
little boy was too cute.
he was adorable. Dominic, oh, the best.
He was great.
So is the
I
show trying to
think
say something?
so. I think so. To your direct question about is this saying something about a woman being able to be a good mother if they have like higher aspirations? I think that's what patriarchy would have you automatically jump to. I think more so it's about the fact that these women had no choice but to step up because their men couldn't. Now,
Mm.
in Violet's situation, she had a man slash men, her husband and her son was able to take care of the things that the man at that point in time was supposed to take care of. So she was able to rest in her femininity and be a more emotional person because she didn't have to worry
Oh.
about all the other things. But Queen Charlotte, she's running a nation in a king's stead. Where is the time that she's supposed to have to just be a queen, to be a mother? She can't. Same thing with Lady Danbury. um Daphne is able to do that because she has the Duke that's like doing the things he's supposed to be doing. Portia Featherington, another one, like her husband was not being the man he was supposed to be. So of
Gambling
course, of
their
course,
money
he has a
away.
short fuse for her daughter's feelings when she's like, I don't have time to worry about whether or not you want to read a book. I need you to get married so I can stop stressing about money.
Mm.
So don't let the patriarchy get you like, oh, women can't be aspirational. No, it's because y'all not doing what you said you were going to do. I'm not saying that you're supposed to do it. The agreement here was you
Yeah.
handle some stuff, I handle the other stuff. If you die or if you are just not able to do what you're supposed to do, somebody's got to do it. I got to step up and do it, and that means that our kids suffer. It's the same exact thing that happens in single Black women households now. It's the same thing over and over and over again. It's not our fault, it's their fault.
That was period.
Period.
No, that's great. Oh snap, yeah. No,
How
that's
can
great.
Danbury be allowed to, like,
And she
get to know her son if
she's
she has to
stressing
worry about
about
everything else?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's damn. That's fair. That's fair. She out here trying to lead a revolution and be an activist, and then her husband dies, and they find out they might be broke. It's that's crazy. They still could have done better, but I
Yes, they could
mean,
have done better, yes.
they could have done better. But and
Danbury specifically before he died is like, why don't you know your kids before he died? There's no I mean,
that
I get that you resent him. She kinda resents the kids too, I think, to that point,
yeah, I think
but
she's definitely disconnected from the kids because the kids are a direct representation of him, right? I hate
mhm,
this life. I hate this man. He's and like I thought the perfect moment to really because I think when you were saying like I don't know if she doesn't like him or doesn't like the situation. I think the perfect moment that lets you know she doesn't like him is when she's talking to Augusta and Augusta was like, "Oh, I didn't know you had all this in you," and she was like, "I'm not quiet. It's just my house. My husband's really loud." Right?
mm,
Like I have my voice. I want to speak. I have these thoughts, like, but he's always trying to be the loudest in the room. And so I get overshadowed. And I was just like, yeah, you don't like that man. And then when they pull
mhm.
up to the house and he's like, oh, this is all I dreamed of. Like, look at us. Like, we're one of them. And I'm like, oh, they're really about to have this moment of like, we came up together. And then when she starts trying to talk, he's like, shut up, woman. I'm going to try the door. I was like, yo, I was like, I hope you die. That was the moment that I was just like, when do
No.
you die?
Can we talk really quickly about the moment he died and how Danbury and what was her name, Coral?
Go, go. Yes. They were ready.
They were like I don't know what it was, but, like, everything like, as a woman, I was just like, "I know exactly what that feels right now, and I wanna hug her too." Like, "Yes, girl, get it!" Like, I didn't know I had that in me because I was like, "Yes," and then when she, like, closes the door and you hear her scream and they just, like, go into action and, like I'm like, "Yes!"
It's like they had it planned out. They knew what they was like, when this moment comes, be ready. Stay
And I
ready.
just love that she had that support in the household, like, a woman who's just like, "This sucks for you, and I'm gonna try to support you as much as I can."
Yeah, because she usually tries to warn her and everything like that so that she could at least mentally prepare on some level. And so yeah, I mean, I love that for her, right? That's something that Charlotte never had. She didn't
Mhm,
have that friendship, that person there to really like look out for her and truly truly confide in 100% because she can't even tell Danbury like what's really going on, right? And
mhm,
everything like that. So she has to carry this cross by she it's her cross to bear by
mhm,
herself.
mhm.
Are we ready for Violet?
Yeah, let's go to Violet.
For Violet. I love this that you put in that.
What? She's horny.
She's horny. For those who don't know, peek behind the curtain, right? When we write our outlines, we'll put down our thoughts, we'll talk, put down points that we want to talk about. Literally, she's horny. And yes, she very much her garden is in first of all, her garden is in bloom. Okay.
I hated that
We do not
analogy.
speak such obscenities. Her garden is in bloom. Okay. The tulips have arisen. The sunflowers are blossoming. The peonies are ready to be plucked.
Alright. Alright. I think that that analogy bothered the hell out of me. I was like, "Can we just say what she wants to say instead of trying to" like, "This is why Daphne didn't like you for, like, half of the first season." Like, "Can we just say it? Just spit it out." Um,
Yes.
I love that they went there with her,
Hmm.
for a
It's
couple
about
of reasons.
time.
Huh?
It's about time.
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. Again, it like she comes off as such a, for lack of better words, a prude, just like
Hmm.
very conservative, very by the book, yada yada yada. So for her to like listen to her body just feels like the
Mm-hmm.
right character development for her. Instead of like listening to what she's supposed to be doing as a woman, she
Hmm.
is finally starting to realize that actually I might want to do something that's counterintuitive to what society is telling me.
Yeah,
So, I love that for her.
and I think part of that too is like she really truly still is mourning her husband. Like the way she talks about this man, I just no one can compare. And I think to her, if no one can compare, there's no ooh, sorry. There's no point in trying. There's no point in going down that road. And so I think it's a mix of I feel like I would be betraying this man if I find somebody else, but also yes, like what will other people say? What will they think? You know, how do I even go like how do I even go about this, right? Like do you just find another a widower and be like, me, you, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's yeah, it's definitely a lot that's swirling inside of her for sure.
What if Violet like seeks out, why are you laughing at me?
Because I like how you leaned in, like it's a secret.
No, it is. What if she winds up sleeping with Dominic, with Lady
Oh,
Danbury's son as like get back? That's not gonna happen. But you know I'm petty, so I'm just like, what could she do? She could sleep with her son. And you know what? Danbury probably be like, I deserve that.
that would be that'd be messed up. That'd be wild.
Jerry, I'm here because my best friend slept with my daddy and had the nerve to keep it a secret from me for over 20 years. So, and that's just wrong. Jerry's like, so what are you here for? What did you we have her backstage? What is it you want to tell her? I'm here to tell her that I've been sleeping with her son and that payback's a B.
I
Rest in peace,
can't.
Jerry Springer.
Yes, R.I.P. Jerry Springer. Oh man, that would be wild though. If she really did do
Hilarious.
that. I'm trying to think if there are any eligible men that we know that would like be available to her, but I can't think
That's a
of.
widower.
Doesn't even have to be a widower, but just I guess they would probably be a widower by default. But just in her age range that's available. I can't. Actually, there are right because when they were trying to marry her off, they was trying to marry her to some old guy. So there's got to be other dudes
There's
around.
probably definitely other dudes around. We just
But
haven't
no
seen them
one,
yet.
yeah, no one in particular that I would be like, oh, they're probably going to at least try this thing. I don't think we've met
Mhm.
the person yet.
Mm-mm.
But
Mm-mm.
I'm interested to see them put her out there. Get
You
her
know
on
who you know who she could have slept with?
that.
I love how my friends can tell when I'm about to say something crazy because I get this like weird like evil glint in my face, like out of my eye.
Yeah, gleam
Um,
in your eye.
the Featherington, Lord Featherington, the new one, the cousin.
But he ran to the Americas,
I
right?
know. I'm just saying she could have.
That would have been a come up for him, for sure. For all of them, honestly.
Oh,
That
Lady Featherington would have been beside herself. Well, actually, no, because the money stays with the dude.
yeah. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
actually,
You're
no,
right.
because he was digging on the Cowper girl, trying to get
Yes.
access to her money. So maybe not. Okay.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
but Lady Featherington was trying to push him into a marriage with one of the girls. So you're actually right. She wouldn't have been happy if he married someone outside the family. She was trying to push him to one of her daughters. So yeah, you're actually right.
Yeah, because she thought he had money and she's trying to get rid of the daughters. But
Oh,
when
you mean
she found
after
out,
she
he was
found
like, "You
out he didn't?
fool! I don't have any money. I was trying to get the Cowper's money, and you just messed that up."
Yeah. But the question is, would he have even shared it anyways to begin with? So
I
that's the
mean,
problem
probably
too.
not. No.
Probably not.
Anyways, back to Violet.
Yes.
So yeah, she's in a stage of her life where she feels like she misses having physical intimacy with another human being. That's her equal to a certain extent.
Hmm.
And I think I like exploring that with her further in future episodes. Like she's kind of almost an empty nester, so to speak. She has grandkids starting to come about. She still has plenty of children she needs to like get out to be on their own as well.
Yeah.
So it's just like she's pouring everything into her family like she's always done, but now she has to deal with the fact that her body's like, hey, I'm still here. You can't just ignore me for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope we continue to explore that in future episodes. But
Hmm.
yeah, especially since we see that like as a child she was so open-minded and just so curious, and her dad used to call her brains, which was super cute.
Yes, that was cute.
um she was well educated, and I love that her dad was just like, ignore your mother, like not to her face, but kind of just like, your mother's dumb, like don't even whatever.
Yeah, because like
um
when the mom is like, "Oh, they're not one of us," and she's like, "But didn't they go to school together? And don't they? Some of them have more money than us, so actually they're probably better than us." Like, you
Didn't
know
they
what
all
I'm
go to
saying?
Oxford? Yeah.
Right. So I love that even though mom is sitting there and being like, "Oh, they're not one of us. I don't want to hang out with them. I don't want them, going to the same modiste as me or anything like that." She just goes into logic mode. She's like, "They're just as educated. They have just as much money or more. Daddy defines a gentleman as someone who's well educated and comes from a good family, and they all seem to come from that. So why are we not equal?" And I love that she's able to do that. And what does her mom do? Shoot her down immediately and is like, "You're doing too much thinking." And when she said that, I tried to think about older Violet,
Mm,
and just in terms of like, especially related to Charlotte and Danbury, right? Or
mm,
even Lady Featherington, just how outspoken they are, and how 10 toe like they stand firm 10 toes down, right, when things are happening. And she feels a little bit more on the delicate side, a little bit more on the shyer, reserved kind of thing. And I think it's because every time you're like, "Hey, look at that, oh my gosh," you have your mother being like, "Put your hand down, we shouldn't have taken her out, you're thinking too much, you're like that criticizing mom trope
mhm.
kind of thing going on." And so I was just like, "Oh, that's kind of why you are the way you are."
I mean, to me, Violet, young Violet, is very similar to Penelope to me.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very similar. Like, I wonder if Violet was a wallflower like Penelope during her first season. Like, was she as like anxious to meet the love of her life, or was she kind of like standoffish by it, or just like afraid of it, or what have you? Like, I wonder what that looked like.
Me too. Maybe we'll get it one day. Who knows? Bring
Maybe.
the content.
So yeah, and we said that we think that Violet is going to bring up the fact that Danbury wrote her dad in a future season.
For sure. For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other predictions that you have for season 3 as we start to wrap
No,
up?
so one thing I noticed on the interweb, someone called out that in the final scene between Violet and Lady Danbury, they both have on like a bluish overcoat with like a yellowish dress or something underneath, and people were calling out that those are Penelope and Colin's colors, which we know is the relationship that will take center stage in the next season. So I thought that was interesting if
Is
true.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. Um and
Because
I'm
I
just
know the third book is different. But I mean, I guess the show could
They
be different.
already
Oh,
Shondaland already confirmed that we're doing Penelope and Colin the next season.
interesting.
They did that a while ago before they announced Queen Charlotte. They said that. And they also acknowledged that it was like out of the order of the books.
Okay. Then that would make sense. Because I was
Yeah.
like, that is not book 3.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
But they said
but
that
okay.
that's where they were going with it. So I don't know. There's that. And I cannot wait to see what Penelope and Eloise are. Like, I cannot wait to see where their friendship is.
Still troubled, I'm sure. I think
Because she
it's gonna
hasn't
be.
told anyone, right?
Hasn't told anyone. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to bounce back. Um, I don't. Dang. I mean, I feel like because the show's gonna show, they're going to get back to where they once were.
Mhm.
But I just feel like real life, it would be hard to get back to where you once were. Like you might get back cool, but not like cool, cool.
It would probably I can see it happening, like, after they both get married, potentially.
Possibly.
Or, like, through both of them getting married is, like, one helping out the other get through whatever it is they're trying to get through is, like what if what what if, Penelope is like, "I will stop being Lady Whistledown if you, like, hook me up with your brother."
I think that's a good match. But I don't think. Here's the thing, right? Do we think Penelope will ever give it up? or want to give it
She
up.
was writing during the winter season. You saw that in this show. That Lady Whistledown was writing about how the queen can't even marry off her own kids. So she is still standing 10 toes down in Lady Whistledown's messiness.
She absolutely is. So that's why I'm like, the I think the big question that's going to is not, because obviously what's her name is probably going to be like, Eloise is going to be like, hey, you need to stop, blah blah blah. The question is, is Penelope going to stop? Does she want to stop? And I don't think so. I think this is her, the one thing that is hers and hers alone. And not only that, but she's so damn good at it
She's
that it's
making
like,
money.
why would I give this up?
The
You know what I'm saying? Look what happened to my mom. Look
the
what happened, you know.
question though is like, I hope they don't do this. I hope they don't be like, oh, she's willing to give it up for a chance with Colin or for like her life with Colin, like giving it up for a man. I hope they don't do that.
I hope not, but I could see it going that way.
Yeah.
But then what are we going to do for the rest of the seasons? So I don't think she's going to give it up. If anything, why don't they team together?
You think Colin would be down with that though? Do you think
Oh,
Colin would have to know that she's doing it?
no.
Hmm.
Because then she can just be like, oh, me and Eloise are going for a stroll. We're just hanging out, whatever. But they're really like working together.
Mm. How do we think Colin is going to come around and be like, "Oh my god, Penelope is so gorgeous. I never knew that she was the person I needed all along."
It's just gonna be one of those slow burn things. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what is gonna be the spark of it all. But yeah, it's just gonna be one of those things where it's like, oh, she's been there all along. Um,
I think Marina has to die in order for that to happen.
Marina has to die, and then he's going to realize that Penelope was the
Like he
one.
has to finally realize that he can never be with Marina. He's still hung
That's
up on her.
going to be crappy. Because then that's Penelope settling for second place. Because literally, this woman had to die
This
for you
woman
to
who
choose
had
me.
two babies that there was that she was trying to trap on your the man that you wanted. He still wanted her after all that. And he's only with you because she died. That's tough.
No, thank you. Next. Thank you. Next.
So those are the things I'm looking forward to for season 3 of Bridgerton. I don't know if there's anything else you're looking forward to at all.
There's rumors in the rumor mill that they're going to start planting the seeds of who Eloise may end up with. Uh,
Mm, don't
which
tell me.
I'm not. But when I found out, I was like, interesting. Um so there's thoughts that they're going to plant the seeds of that. If you don't want to know, just don't look up the titles of the books. And that goes for you and for any of the um any of the viewers, watchers, listeners, subscribers. um if you don't want to know, don't look up the titles of the books, because the titles of the books are just going to give it away from you for
Do
you.
they?
They do, because literally, just like how the first book is called The Duke and I, like, okay, so don't do it. um that's why when you were like, oh, the third season is going to be Colin and Penelope, I was like, that's not the third book though. I've never read the books, y'all, just so y'all know. I've never read the books. I just seen the titles of them, but that's why I was like, that's not the third book. What is happening? So they may plant the seeds for that. I feel like they're going to also have to plant the seeds for Benedict as well, because he's got to probably get shipped off soon. Um,
Okay, so I just did exactly what you told me not to
of course.
and looked up the titles of the books.
Why would you?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do not look up the titles of the books if you don't want it
I don't know why you did that to yourself.
because I'm hard headed.
I
You know
don't know why
what?
you
This
did that.
actually, honestly, like knowing this though, like I'm just reading the titles and making educated guesses based off of the backs of people that I see here. And if this is
Oh,
what I think it is, it would still be really interesting to see how it plays out, I would say.
yeah.
Even
So
though
the
I know it might happen, it's just how is kind of like Queen Charlotte. I know what happens at the end, but I still want to see how it plays out.
yeah. So then you probably clicked a different link than I did, because the link I clicked on, not only did it give the titles of the books, but then on top it told you
What
like,
happened?
yeah, because like you could argue, one could argue, right? The Duke and I, it's like, okay, who's I, right?
Yeah.
But above it, it's like Daphne and Hastings, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at the titles,
So that's what it did for me, and so
and
that's
for
not
only for the Duke and I and for the Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton, do you see people's faces. For the
yeah,
other book titles, you just see, like, their back or their side, so you can't tell exactly who they're talking about.
right.
Um, but the one that has a name in the title, I'm just like,
Hmm.
"Wait, I know that name."
Hmm.
And if the person on the back of the cover is who I think it is, that's an interesting connection that they're gonna have to set up in an interesting way.
That's what I'm saying. They're going to be planting seeds for sure. So I think
Mm.
moving into season 3, I think as much as we're going to be in the moment, I think we need to be looking out for what are they trying to set up for future times to come. So I'm really interested to get into that for sure.
One last thing before we wrap up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of this or if our listeners or watchers are aware of this, but Queen Charlotte is now a book as well. So the original author of the Bridgerton books, what's her name? Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes got together and wrote a ninth book called Queen Charlotte for the purposes of this show. So I think, I think people think they're going to go all the way and do all of 8 kids. Um, I hope Netflix
Okay.
is around long enough in order for that to happen, because who knows what's happening with Netflix, but
They, they
I
may
think
end
that
up
would be amazing.
condensing.
Hmm?
I wouldn't be surprised if they condense. So like throw 2 books into
Oh,
one season and just like somehow make it
they can
work.
totally do that. They can totally do that. There's enough,
But
like,
like
B and C
8
plot lines
seasons?
you can fit them both in.
I don't know if I want 8 seasons of Bridgerton, bro.
No, I don't neither, and to be quite honest, I don't care about anyone after Colin and Benedict. Like, give me Eloise, Benedict, Colin. You're about to give me Colin, give me Benedict and Eloise, and then I don't care about the other ones, like
Yeah. The other kids,
Hyacinth,
Hyacinth, George.
George,
I feel like there's one more.
Francesca. I don't care about them.
There you go. I don't. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope they condense it. I hope they get it together. Also, call George R. R. Martin, because if y'all were able to get this book off.
Shonda has a team of writers.
First of all, she wrote the whole series already and said another one. Right? I didn't even see this one coming, but guess what? Another one. Call that man. Somebody check on George R. R. Martin. Is he okay?
He's out in New Mexico living his best life, living off of those HBO checks. He don't give a crap about nobody.
Oh, call him up, please. But anywho, that is our episode for Bridgerton. For Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton Story, episodes 1 through 60. And so we did an entire season, guys. It took us 2 hours, but we did it. And thank you for hanging in there with us. I hope you guys thought this conversation was interesting. I know I definitely did. We had a lot of fun. We love talking Bridgerton. It's always fun to talk something outside of like the typical fandoms and stuff too.
Yeah.
So definitely had a great time with you, T. Thank you for always enlightening me and and bringing in that extra spice that we always need. For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys stay tuned for more content to come. Follow us on our socials at Casual Fangirls _. We are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Do all the things. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, all the things. Let us know if you guys watched. Did you like it? Did you love it? Was you not feeling it? Are you guys excited for season 3 and what might be to come with Bridgerton as we continue on? Do you want 8 seasons of Bridgerton, or what? Let us know all your thoughts for sure, for
I
sure.
want more spinoffs.
I will take more spin-offs.
I'd rather take a Danbury, Brimsley, Violet spinoff, Lady Featherington spinoff before you give me like 7, the other
The
3
rest of the
Bridgerton
kids.
kids. Yeah.
So just the adult kids and then spin-offs.
Yeah.
That's all we
That's
need.
what I want.
I feel you. I'm actually with you on that one. I'm with you on that. They got a lot of work to do to make the younger kids interesting.
Yep.
And so we'll see how it goes. So I am Nessa,
And I'm T.
and together we are the Casual Fangirls. Thank you for tuning in. We will be seeing you guys very, very soon. Take care.
Bye.